You won't be able to have effective classroom management without creating psychological safety. Psychological safety plays a critical role in classroom management and the ability for students to learn. Whether it's what lies awake in the dark or what actually is in a hot dog, the unknown can create fear or anxiety. It's no different in the classroom. Relieving the stress of as much ambiguity as you can helps create a more positive classroom, build trust, and enhance students' ability to learn. The first strategy involves considering whether you think of yourself as a coach or a teacher. A coach helps train the players so they can play their best, ideally winning games. The rules of the game are objective and clear, and so are the expectations for each player. Each game is a type of assessment that provides insights into how players can improve. After each game, the whole team evaluates what went well and how they can improve. Winning the game is the goal, and the coach is shoulder to shoulder with the players as they try to achieve that goal. When we transition that analogy to the classroom, make the assessment expectation the objective, clear rules of the game. By creating transparency in the goals, the students feel safer and more in control. In addition, because you're all working toward the same goals, you can come alongside students to help them achieve that goal. You're on the same team. If the reasons and goals of the assessment are not clear, then the unknowns around the assessment are in the hands of the teacher, not the students. The unknowns can create a division between teacher and student, where the teacher has the power and the students need to guess how to succeed. This ambiguity creates insecurity and inhibits the student's ability to do their best. Creating greater transparency in your strategies and assessments can transform your classroom. Here are 2 strategies to make your classroom more transparent. So the first one is grading. I know, you put your grading scale on your classroom policies at the beginning of the year. That's enough, right? Nope. Transparency with grading begins with being clear with yourself by answering this key question. What are you actually assessing? For example, I've had students create highly visual depictions of works of literature, asking them to analyze the text through color, shape, and metaphor, teasing out relevant quotes to incorporate into their drawing. Overall, it was a good exercise that led to some wonderful pieces to display in the classroom. However, I began to ask whether it was worth the time it takes the students to complete an excellent product. And am I assessing their understanding of the literature or their art skills? If I'm assessing understanding, how will I know that they have achieved that understanding? Going a little deeper, are you assessing content knowledge or a skill? If it's content knowledge, do the students have a clear idea of the content being assessed, where to find the information, and what success looks like? If it's a skill, scaffold the lesson so the students have clear expectations and examples. A rubric is a good beginning. It clarifies what you will be looking for, but most students won't have your insight and training to know what to look for. Examples for the students are critical, so they can see the difference between one rubric level and another. So the second strategy is working backward. You may have heard this before, but implementing it transformed the way I organized my lessons and made sure that my units were cohesive and transparent. You begin with the end in mind. At the end of a unit, what content and what skills will you expect students to demonstrate their knowledge of? Then create the assessment. Then work backward to ensure the students have the skills and knowledge necessary to succeed. Here's an example. I knew that I wanted to assess students' writing ability and their knowledge of the text. I created 5 different essay prompts. I told the students that I would choose one of the prompts for them to respond to for the assessment. As I planned for the rest of the unit, I made sure that all the activities, discussions, and even smaller assignments directly related to at least one of those writing prompts. Toward the end of the unit, students would collect their information, create outlines with supporting quotes for each of the prompts. They could use their outlines for the in-class essay. The result? The students had to learn all the content in preparation for the essay, and I would assess their writing ability using the rubric I shared with them at the beginning of the unit. And I only had to read one prompt response. Throughout the entire unit, students knew what was expected of them, which gave them agency and psychological safety. We could work together toward their success. How can you increase the psychological safety of your students this week? How can you implement greater transparency in your units moving forward?